You're supposed to wait on me.
I know, sorry.
What?
I just want to throw you off.
Yeah. Welcome to season 2 of the Jeremy Mullins podcast, where we take a deep dive into different educational topics to help you optimize your life. I am Jeremy, your host, strength and conditioning coach, registered dietitian. And today I'm here with the last lifestyle winner of the first Phorm Transformation Challenge, Mr. Gavin Bishop. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Still riding high?
I am not a super emotional guy. So
Yes.
when I found out, my wife was like, "Why are you crying?" I was like, "I don't know, just emotions right now, just everything." Because
I'm not. I was fixing onions, honey. I am not crying.
Yeah. While we're standing in line at the zoo to go to the bathroom.
Yeah. Listen, man, it was because I didn't know that you had won when we had our phone conversation,
Mhm.
earlier that morning. And then
Okay.
I think it was not too long after that, I got the call, found out, and they were trying to, get out there to surprise you, right? So
Yeah.
then I'm just like, crap, like, okay, I know his brother, and at the time I was like, is it brother-in-law? And like, because I just,
Mhm.
all this information about people, like I know it, but sometimes it gets a little bit blurred. So I'm like, well, maybe
Yep.
it's, which is funny because I told Will, I was like, I think it's his brother-in-law, maybe it's his brother. And then I think he remembered brother-in-law because it was the first thing I said,
Yeah.
his brother. But
Mm.
yeah, so I'm reaching out to him Instagram, and of course it's like sliding into DMs like, hey man, can I get your cell phone number?
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
and then he's like, well, I really don't know his schedule. Let me get his, your wife's number, so eventually I got her number. So then I'm reaching out, I'm like, hey, it's Jeremy. And I can't remember if he gave me her number or I sent her a message on Instagram.
Mhm.
But anyway, it was like a day of me trying to figure out what your schedule was. And then your wife, she was awesome. She just basically sent me the screenshot of the calendar for that day. It was like, here's what the plans are.
Yep.
So,
No, and it's weird because my brother called and was like, "Hey," or shot her a text and said, "Hey, call me when you can." My brother doesn't randomly text my wife,
yeah.
so she's all, "What's going on?" She's like,
Well,
"Oh,
yeah,
nothing, just."
100%. It's like, it's like when our wife say, hey, we need to talk. It's like,
Uh-huh.
what did I do? Right.
Yep.
So it's like, you don't want to scare anyone, but we were trying to, it was just a short window. So we were trying to get it made. And, Will and I had some laughs at it because I was like, yeah, he's like, Gavin saw that you were traveling to South Carolina, like, no, South Carolina's family. It's all good.
Yep.
So we were joking. I was like, what you should do, Will, is next time you travel somewhere non-related, like film it and save it. And then just put
Yeah.
random, like at the next winning, like put random places you're traveling just to throw people off,
Uh-huh.
you know.
Uh,
So
I mean, yeah, because he really didn't travel at all, like the part of the at last
no,
part of the
and
year. So
yeah,
it
and
was,
it's a busy time, and
yeah.
I am actually pretty excited about this year us moving to quarterly challenges, because
Hmm.
then it gives a little bit more time to announce the winners and doesn't really affect anything, right?
Yes.
Looking back at it the last 5 or 6 years, having the dates, which is, once again, it's good, right? Because if a challenge
Hmm.
date is set here, a lot of times it does, I don't want to say force people, but it creates that urgency to for people to get started, right?
Yeah.
But now I kind of like the rolling window for multiple different reasons. It's easier for the team to plan, ahead and be
Hmm.
like, okay, these are the weeks that we need to film, these are the weeks that we need to make announcements. Like a lot of it now
Yep.
can be planned out since it is in quarters and it's set, so
Yeah.
um,
And I mean, I think it's fantastic. I was having a conversation with my brother, and he is in a season of life where he works for Kroger. They're opening 2, 3 stores in 1 month, and he's just doing everything he can to stay
yeah.
on target. But I let him know, I was like, hey, if you need to, delete that first photo and jump in a couple weeks later, because then you could hit the ball running, doing what you really want to do.
Yeah, and I still think we'll get some people, coming like that February 4th deadline that, when First Phorm and ourselves, we
Mhm.
start posting like, hey, here's the last day to get in for this quarter, that will get like some people to jump in, but also you can just wait and start and do your own week after that, and it just goes into the next
Yeah.
challenge. So I think it's good really from the coaching standpoint. Okay. Because
Hmm.
what I found is, yes, I probably only have 60% of the people, that would normally be in a challenge right now, but that I gain each week. So I think by the time
Yes.
if you look at it, by the time the quarter is over, I will be at that 100% mark of what I was coaching with, to begin
Hmm.
with. Okay.
Yeah.
With that being said to the listeners, hey, if it's your first time listening, that is how I coach, is via the First Form app. So if you're interested in that, you can download the First Form app on firstform.com, add me as your advisor / coach, Jeremy at firstform.com. And, I'm proud to say, like, Gavin, this is kind of a good and bad way. I don't know what number you are as far as winner.
Yeah.
Cause
I like it.
yeah, because I kept count for a while because it was like a chip on my shoulder. And then once we hit 30, people winning, I've kind of stopped counting. So we're in the 30s. I
Yeah.
know that. So I can't give you a number, but
That's
you come
fine. I I was thinking about yesterday, how many years has the challenge been running?
gosh, now you're getting me because everything runs together. So I moved out in 2018
Okay.
and we started working on the app. So then the My Transformation Challenge, was just a website, and when people had to hold up photos, and then we started working on the app, and the app came, I want to say, the spring of 2019, right? So the
Gotcha.
challenge was happening before that, and we used to do quarterly challenge winners. And then you'd have a big year winner. It was kind of how it
Hmm.
was, in the beginning. So it's changed over, over the course of the years. But I can't remember
Yeah.
exactly. Maybe 2017, 16, 17 is when
Okay.
the challenge actually became a thing, right?
Gotcha.
Which is kind of cool because now we're moving on. This is 2025. So in a couple of years, that's a decade of challenges.
That's
you know,
awesome.
and I'm excited, I mean, because there's thousands of people that enter the challenge. And
Hmm.
this, like we don't run any game plan different than what the education is out there, right? We
Yep.
educate in Team Alpha, the same way that everyone else does. I just think that we as a group do a better job at bonding and creating a team within a team.
Hmm.
So we have this culture within the First Form culture, and the belief. I think that,
Yeah.
for example, like when you see Kevin, when you see Adam, and you see some Marcus, some of these individuals who win, then you have the belief that you can win.
Yep.
And I think that
Definitely.
really, yeah, really helps out, in that. So, but without further
Yep.
ado, man, I'm sorry, we got to talk a little bit there. I guess our tip of the day could be laundry, right? We were talking about that off off camera earlier.
Oh man.
Listen, Katie and I have went to here's how you get laundry done. Crack
First form.
open an energy drink, preferably a First Form energy drink.
Hmm.
And then just do laundry once a day. Me and my wife, we call it once a day. We're going to do laundry once a day. That way it's just easy. It doesn't take as long to fold it,
Yep.
instead of waiting. And then you're on the weekend, you got 7 loads of laundry to do. And you're like, that was the day.
Yeah.
So that's my
Yep.
advice. 1 load a day.
I'm See, it's not doing the laundry, it's folding it. That's the problem.
Yeah. Throwing it in the washer, throwing it in the dryer. Like that's the easy part, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Ugh.
Katie give me a hard time. Anytime I have to go away from military, I was like, hey, I did the laundry. And she's like, throwing it in the washer and the dryer before you leave is not doing it. And I'm like, oh, okay, gotcha. So
I'll
we're
work on
one.
it.
Yeah, so we're 1 a day. We do a load a day, no matter how big the load is, and that seems to have helped out quite a bit. So
I like it. I need to definitely switch something up and take a play out of that book. So
awesome. All right, man. Let's do a couple things. Let's introduce yourself.
sure.
Tell listeners. I know a lot of the listeners are on Team Alpha, so they know you.
Mhm.
But we also have a lot of new people and a lot of people who listen that not isn't necessarily in that direct line.
Yeah.
And tell a little bit about your family and how you got introduced to First Form. So that's kind of how I want you to kind of start this out.
Yeah. So uh Gavin, I'm 33 now, turned 34 in October of this year. Um I've honestly been a big kid my entire life. Um when I was in high school, I was wrestled for heavyweight, weighing about 215, about 6 foot tall. So decent for that size. Currently sitting at about that same weight, a little bit less. But I never thought I would hit that target. I thought 215 was the lowest. Like I wanted to go into Coast Guard out of school. and 208 was what I had to hit, and I was at 245 when I graduated high school. Like, there's no way I can hit weight. I tried. Apparently didn't try hard enough, because definitely at that now, and I'm 15 years later, kind of thing. So, but it's a little bit about the family aspect too, and I might be all over the place because that's just me. That's how my brain works. But married, 2 kids, 5 and 8, high school sweetheart. Been with her since 2007. So we've been through everything together, quite literally. And I just got sick and tired of it last year. I was done 75 hard. Well, let's back up a little bit. How I found out about First Form, first and
Well,
foremost.
I want to pause for just a second,
Yeah.
because I think for a lot of the listeners out there, you just made us feel old. High
Sorry.
school sweethearts, 2007.
I know.
I'm like, oh. I don't know if Bailey listens to the podcast. Bailey was a dietitian at First Form for a little bit, and she was our first intern that come in from one of the local colleges doing an internship with us. And one day she walks in, she's got 1998 on her a necklace. I'm like, that's cool.
Yeah.
She's like, it's when I was born. I'm like, yeah, I was graduating high school. So, needless to say, but I'm sorry. But for the listeners out there, like, hey, age is just a number. Remember, it's one of my goals.
It is.
Yeah, one of my goals with the podcast and my teaching is we are training and we are living a way of life right now. Going back to the introductory of the podcast, I want you to optimize your life so that you're 62 to 82 years, that golden years, you can do whatever you want to physically. That's the goal.
Yeah.
But going back, how did you get introduced to First Form as a brand? And then we'll kind of go through that, and then we'll start back to what you said, sick and tired last January. And that's kind of where we'll start the story.
Perfect. So First Form, I was introduced kind of a weird roundabout way. I started following Derek Weida on Instagram, and I liked his stuff. He was kind of off the wall. One great physique. He struggles, obviously, PTSD. He's lost a leg in the military, so a lot of respect for that man. And then I saw him post stuff on First Form, and I was like, well, this is kind of a cool brand. And then he posted another thing on First Form, and I was like, all right, let me look into this a little bit more. So that's how I got started with it. But then to add on and stack onto that, there's a guy I follow back home in California, and he had started 75 hard. And I had heard about it. And I was like, you know what? I've thought about doing it. Let's jump in. At the time, I was a carpenter. I did construction. I told myself, this was back in 2021. So, Jimmy, you're like this story. This is when I first started getting back into the First Form app. Actually, first started with the First Form app, had Derek as a coach, and I wanted to.
August 23rd, 21. So
is that what it was?
Don't worry. The app tells the story, man. Yeah.
So my wife, I looked at her. I'm like, well, it looks like Planet Fitness is going to start charging us again. And she dead looked at me and said, well, I guess you should start using it, huh?
Not that we should cancel it. Not that we need to fight this. Maybe you need to. Maybe you need to start using it.
Yep. I was like, you're right. Because obviously 2020, they weren't charging anybody and couldn't use it. So that next morning, I had to be at work at 6 o'clock. I was in the gym at 4:20 that next morning. And I started going, finished my workout. The guy posted that he was on his third day of 75 hard. I was like, screw it. We're going for it. So that was my introduction to 75 hard. And then by way of First Form and everything,
kind of put it together, from there.
Yeah. And now I'm just a fan of the culture, the clientele, the family, just everything about First Form is awesome. So that's kind of how I found out about First Form and got started with them. Not to say I didn't fall off the track, because I did 75 hard. I got down to 230 range, and I was like, yeah, this is great. Like, I've never been here before I graduated high school. Like, this is fantastic. And then I moved to cross country.
And I'll just interject. This is normal. I want people to understand this. Like, And if you're a new listener and you haven't saw Gavin's progress photos, you can go to either one of our Instagrams. I think I've still got no, I don't have one of yours pinned right now, but it's on there somewhere. It's on your Instagram. We'll put those in the show notes. But if there's someone who's want to do it right now, what's your Instagram handle?
Gavin Bish. So
Sorry.
TheGavBish.
Awesome. Yeah. Go take a look at his progress photos. Awesome. But I want to point out something. So 8/23/21. So August 23rd, 2021. He got in the app. Actually, he gained a little bit. So he downloaded the app, probably didn't do anything. Finally got started on the date he mentioned. Lost looked like 20 some pounds. But then November of that year, looks like he gained a little bit to February.
Oh, yeah.
And then from February to
the following year or so.
Yeah, I want to say it's January, basically 2024. Okay. It looks like there's a weigh-in in there in December too. So maybe that was when it triggered you in the holidays.
Yeah.
Got to do something. And that weight was tipping close to 300 pounds. And I want to say, guys, that's normal. Most people don't come in to like, okay, I'm going to start my wellness journey. I'm going to get healthier. And they automatically things go well. Right now, it does happen. Some people are able to do that, just like quitting smoking, right? People are just able to cold turkey quit and make it work. But a lot of people have to try multiple times, right? And this is what you're at, right? This good 2 years there before it clicked and before you're like, okay, I've got to push, all my chips in and go all in on this. And that was kind of, where we're going to start the story at today and kind of walk through it from an educational standpoint. And I'm scrolling down to weight's going up. When you scroll down here, weight goes up, right?
Oh, yeah.
288, 29. There it is, 293.4, January 1st. And I would probably argue that you probably lost a little bit of weight in December, considering you look like you logged in the app in December there. So
I don't believe so. I will be honest with you. If anything, it probably went up because I'm Italian. I make homemade manigat, homemade meatballs. So that was right after all that.
Yeah. So over December, you were having the Last Supper. Is what you're saying?
Essentially, yeah. Okay. And then it really started when I said I was going to make a change. I was like, numbers guy. So Monday was the first, so I was starting on a Monday. I was like, this is great. That's how my brain operates. That's how I work. It has changed now, but that's how I operated.
Yeah. Yes.
And I was like, this is it. Literally the Last Supper. But when I was doing the Last Supper on November or December 31st, I had a video taken of my daughter and I dancing. I was large. It was no confidence. I didn't want to dance. I felt like a buffoon and no one was around. It was just my daughter and I.
Yeah.
And I did not want to feel that anymore. I shoot photography on the side. So every time I'm taking photos at weddings and stuff, it's always a father-daughter dance, first dance or whatever. And I just picture myself, am I going to be around to do this dance with my daughter when she gets married? And that hit home real hard for me.
That was your trigger. And
that was it.
Listen, if you're sitting on the sidelines right now, you don't know where to start, you're struggling, we change as human beings for pain or pleasure. And what Gavin is saying, that was pain, right? Seeing himself in that video, seeing himself in the process of am I going to be around to have this dance with his daughter? That's pain. That's not pleasure, right? But we change for pain or pleasure. And a lot of times, unfortunately, I think for our health, something negative / pain has to happen before people wake up and make that change.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I was sitting there, it's New Year's Eve. I had a couple drinks and normally I would be 2 sheets to the wind, to be completely honest. Over summer, it was bad. I was drinking good old cases of twisted tea. And when I say cases, it was a couple of them. My neighbors, my brother-in-law, not my brother, my brother-in-law, we can all get down a little bit. A case of Miller Lite, a case of Coors Light, you name it. We have a good time. And I made a promise to myself, obviously with 75 hard. And I, by all means, I don't think I'm an alcoholic. I just enjoy drinking. I'm I enjoyed how it made me feel in that moment. Now, I don't like drinking that much because it's not a 1 day recovery or 2 day recovery or 3 day. Because the next day, I meet my hangover with a couple drinks, and then that leads to a couple more drinks, and then it's the next day already. So,
Oh, and I had this
um,
conversation with a good friend yesterday. He stopped drinking, and he's like, for I guess back in COVID, he started drinking really heavily, and he's like,
mhm,
it controlled my life, and it was harder and harder to quit. And so he just made the decision, like, he's like, I feel like I am an alcoholic, and he's like, I'm just gonna stop. And then
yeah,
we have another the best man at my wedding. He's a fully recovered alcoholic, and it's really brought like, because for me it's the same way. Like I enjoy having a bourbon every now and again,
mhm,
right? I enjoy having drinks. And even for me, I've noticed over the last few years, like just the recovery aspect of like, man, it's not, unless I'm doing a celebration, like
mhm,
now is very few in between. Yes, I still drink, but it's not as much. And it's
yeah,
definitely not as much when I drink, if that makes sense.
yep,
Yep. Like I'm
yep,
still, like the first warm weekend that we have,
mhm.
and it's warm is relative because listen, it's gonna be 68 degrees here this week. But I am looking forward. I still got some summer shandies left over from the summer. Like I'm looking forward to taking some blueberries and putting in a summer shandy and having after like
Mhm,
a hot bike ride. But
yep.
it's one drink and move on. So that was a question I was going to ask is, have you quit 100%, or are you still only having one every now and again? And like me just saying it's
Yeah.
like only for celebrations or only for special events.
So I think I will get to the point where it's going to be celebrations, special events, stuff like that.
Yep.
Maybe a glass of wine. I don't think I my crutch was vodka. Um, it's just easy to drink. So if I do go back, it's going to be wine or tequila on the rocks. Maybe an occasional light beer after a lawn mow or something.
Yep.
But I haven't drank since January 1st of 2024 last year.
Awesome. So
So I've had
you're over a year now.
Yeah, so I've had a couple non-alcoholics, I think three over all of last year, and it just didn't do it for me. It
Well,
was just
heck, man,
I didn't see any.
I'm going to ask for like 2 bottles of bourbon for you for winning
Yeah,
then. I
right.
saved you money last year, right? You didn't drink,
Right.
so no wonder you're like, yeah, yeah, I got that, Jeremy. I'll get that bottle,
Yeah,
no problem.
yeah, I'll get that, no problem. You want a 15-year, 20-year? What you
Yeah,
want?
now I know why you were like sending me photos of all those good ones. All right. Uh,
Yeah,
just so we don't run over too much on time.
no,
And I
you're
love that
good.
because that was what I was going to ask anyway. That was one of my questions I had of like,
Hmm.
what was the feelings in versus now? And I'm sure, you know, we'll just kind of top this off and we'll get into a little bit of the numbers. I'm sure now when you see a photo of you dancing with your daughter or you with your daughter, like there's a different thought process. I bet you feel better as a man, you'll feel better as
Hmm.
a husband and as a dad seeing that visual photo or video now.
Yeah, so it goes a little bit beyond that. I'm repairing myself mentally as well. So growing up, not throwing anybody under the bus. It's just how everything planned out. Um, my my parents were older. My dad was 40 when I was born. My mom was 34 when I was born, and then my brother's 5.5 years younger than me. So my dad was 46 when my brother was born. So I have older parents. Given my dad played football when football was really football, not throwing again, not throwing shade at anybody, but he graduated high school in 1969. So it's just kind of one of those things. Um, I don't recall a ton of my childhood. I recall the sports and the activities, and my dad was there at every game, every practice. He was my coach, stuff like that. But the the dancing when I was younger, stuff like that, I don't recall. So I'm a little dissociated personally with that. So I am physically and mentally trying to repair myself with my own children as well. And I think that's kind of stemmed a little bit with my unhealthy habits to my current healthy habits. Um, so
No, I think, and your dad was probably a little older, or maybe in the same age, because you're a little bit younger than I am. But I think it was that era too,
yeah,
right? Like it wasn't like I have no problem, hugging my kids, telling them I love them, and
hmm
like even Brady has, but that was tough. Like I don't, my dad wasn't an
yeah,
affectionate person like that, and I think that was a
same,
era,
yeah. And
not
now,
not era as in like a bad thing, the era of that age.
Yes. And now he says it all the time. My mom always been great with it. But my dad even mentioned his dad only said it a couple times too. So it's definitely that era thing. So.
Listen, my dad may have said, I love you more than I remember, maybe when I was little, but as an adult, like, the last, I remember one time that he said it and got him to say it. It was the last time that I actually seen him alive, and I told that story only to a few people. And like, it was one of those things like, is that the reason he said it then? Like God has, these wonderful mysteries and the way things happen, but I'm content with that. Right. Get to say that was the last words in person that he said to me, and I can live with that. It feels good.
So. Yeah, definitely.
All right. So January last year, 293 pounds. And
that wasn't my heaviest either. So in 2017, 2018, I hit 304 and I had promised myself I would never go over 300.
Yeah. So you just didn't get back on the scale after that, right?
Pretty much. Or yeah.
Yeah. Till you lost the lid. Yeah, so 300 pounds. And guys, what we're going to do in the second part of the episode is just kind of walk through the game plan we had. And, Gavin will just, you continue just talking about the feelings and how things changed along the way. I think that's important for people to hear, right? So here we are, 290 pounds. And once again, we may be off a few. We kind of did a recap of what his numbers were off camera before we started the podcast today so that we both could remember. But we started out roughly 2,500 calories. 215 grams of protein. Going back to what you said earlier, the goal was to hit 215 pounds. So we like to start people out at that 1 gram of protein per target body weight. So, here we are, 2,500 calories, 215 grams of protein. And, from the beginning, I remember like you did well hitting protein.
Yeah.
Out the gate, and then, calories, I want to say you were a little bit low too. I don't think you were actually hitting the 2,500 in the beginning.
I don't think so either. I was trying not to go over on carbs. And by the time I hit my protein, if I was adding any carbs to it, usually added protein to it. So I didn't want to go over my protein. I quickly learned you can go over protein. So, yeah.
So a couple of things I want people to understand. Remember, he's 290 pounds. Rough estimate of your resting metabolic rate is 10 calories per pound. But you have to take in consideration here, he was almost 300 pounds with a goal weight of 215. So we're talking, 80 to 100 pounds of body fat that we need to lose. And when you have that body fat you need to lose, you're more plus or minus 10 or 15% off of that 10 calorie calculation. So your resting metabolic rate roughly was probably 2,500 calories, not 2,900. So I'm good with people being under calories a little bit, as long as hunger is good, which you never complained of hunger the first month. You were hitting protein, you were actually going over protein. So those are some things that we're kind of look at in the beginning. And we go back to January, you lost 13 pounds in the first month, which was awesome. 13-pound drop, which, some of that could have been inflammation from your, I was going to say Mexican, Italian feast that you had the, quote unquote end of the year. But a good drop. And I've had people lose 80, 100 pounds a year that don't drop that much, but you drop 13 out of the gate, hitting over 215 grams of protein, not hitting calories. So what we did was, come January, we made that adjustment of increasing protein to 250 and then just kind of pulled the carbs and fats down to what you were averaging, I think, if I remember that correctly, which puts you at 2,200, 2,300, somewhere in there as a goal with that increase in protein. And then from there, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we made many changes after January. February on through the spring into the summer, we kind of held it at that 22, 2,300, 250 grams of protein, right?
Yeah. So the only adjustment we made was we bumped up protein to 275, 300. Carbs stayed at 125 and my fat stayed at 60 throughout the entire year.
Yeah. Okay. So we made that protein adjustment a little bit later in the year too, right? Moving it on up.
I want to say it was early February.
Okay.
Yeah, it's January 30th.
Okay. And I think that comes from, normally I don't I won't increase someone's protein higher until we're getting closer to like a goal weight. But I remember for you just like eating it, which, kind of going to now, like, in all transparency, guys, Gavin's still eating 300 grams of protein. Not that he needs
more.
To. Yeah. Okay. 320, whatever you're landing right now. It's not that he needs that much right now because we're not in a big caloric deficit. We're actually working his calories back up a little bit. But he just enjoys eating it. But why I like to increase protein throughout someone's journey is your protein needs in a reduced caloric diet are higher than in a calorie stable diet or in a calorie surplus diet, because that extra protein is going to do multiple things. One, it's going to keep you full. So the higher protein in your diet is going to help with your satiety levels. Two, it is going to increase the calories consumed. Therefore, you won't have as big a drop in your resting metabolic rate. This is going to be very important once you reach your goal weight, that you haven't slowed that metabolism down because you've been eating the extra calories from the protein. Okay. And three, it burns more calories. So by you eating an extra 100, 125 grams of protein a day over the course of 8 months, that's an extra 80, 90 calories a day. I mean, I don't know what the math is offhand on that, but if you do it, that's quite a bit of calorie expenditure just from eating extra protein. So that's the reason I do like to increase, the protein up, inside someone's plan when we're looking at dropping 80, 100 pounds or even 10 or 15 pounds, right? When we're looking at dropping body fat.
Yep.
Now, I talk about the snowball theory all the time. Build momentum, and then push. Okay. So kind of take us through maybe the first quarter into the second quarter of last year, your mindset change. Okay. When it was really like, man, I'm doing this, right? And I'm not falling off. I'm having success with this. Just kind of, speak on that, so that, because I think where people struggle a little bit is they don't have the belief that they can change.
Yeah. So it all falls back to why I started. But I was feeling good. Finished 75 hard, went right into phase 1, and that kind of that pushed me into quarter 2. So by doing 75 hard through Q1 and the first challenge, dialing it in, staying dialed in through the second challenge, not giving myself any rest break in between there, I was just building that mentality and stacking those W's. And then I remember, I think it was like day 13 or day 14 of phase 1, I forgot to take a picture. And I had to start all over. So I did 100 something days straight of 75 hard essentially. And then we were still in the second challenge at that point. So I just kept that ball rolling. Yep. And I think I reached out to you and said, hey, I can't increase my time, but I want to increase my intensity. So I bought a rucksack and I was throwing 40 pounds in that bag. And then I got silly and I think I started putting 50 to 65 in there, just saying, let's go for it. And over time, I got tired. I mean, when you're doing 2 workouts a day, one of them's either rucking, walking, whatever, you're in a caloric deficit, you do get tired. There's 100%. No end if, uts, ors about it. But just knowing that, remember why you started, and just controlling what you can control. And I kind of let that saying dictate into my day-to-day as well, for my job. And so I'm in sales. I'm not in cold call sales, but warm sales. So just knowing those calls were going to come in, regardless how slow you were, and just doing everything in your power to, manage it and execute. That's the game plan. So I think over time it stacks.
Yeah. And I think there are a couple of things with 75 hard, remember it is a program for discipline. And Andy will say that, because if you look at optimal performance, you're going to need some light recovery days in there to have peak performance. But people are not doing 75 hard, can you get someone into peak performance? Yeah. So what I'm saying, like mentally 100%. But if we're talking about peaking for athletic performance, grinding yourself down every single day, you're going to be tired because you're carrying fatigue into that. But most people need it for the discipline. Okay. And I will also throw this out, which Andy's fine on. My opinion, okay, you're doing 75 hard, and you're going to say that you're tracking, macros. My opinion, you have to hit protein. Like if you miss your protein, then you start over, because that is a very, very important piece of it. And then there also should be a caloric, top into that, which, we had you on, so because if fat loss is the goal, I don't want to say ultimate goal of 75 hard, but fat loss is your goal and you're choosing to do 75 hard as part of your journey, then you need to have a calorie ceiling and you need to have a minimum amount of protein. That's my opinion. That should be, especially if you're tracking macros, because I've seen so many people be like, oh, I'm just tracking macros. That's my diet. I'm staying away from X, Y, and Z. Well, that's not building discipline, what you need to hit to produce results from the number standpoint.
Yeah. And I think even when we started, I just started with the mentality of 75 hard. And then I think it was Q2 going into Q3. And it was like, we might have something here.
Yeah. I like very few people have ever come to me and say, I want to win a challenge. And we've been like, okay, well, let's go. Right. Like if that occurs and it happens or someone does good, someone's generally been around the app. And what I mean by that, like, they've been around and it's, they've been 1 foot in, 1 foot out and they go. But I always say, like, and you look back at my tradition of results, most of the winners, we're talking about having 30 plus winners, have come in like the second part of the year, right? Yeah. Because we build the momentum, we build the snowball, and then we start driving it. And I think that comes with trust, right? Like I try to build trust with you so that if I say, hey, I need you to stand on your head and rub your belly, that'll help you to drop body fat. You're like, okay, Roger that. Let's go.
Sounds good. How long?
Yeah. Okay, that is a joke. So I don't want to see people standing on their head rubbing their belly. Going back to some numbers here, just listener, to quote, go over this, right? So 13 pounds in January, and then from January 29th it was at 280 to February 26, 280 to 265. So there we lost 13 and then 15 pounds, right? So we're picking up speed. And then February 26th at 265 to March 25th to 254. So there was 11 pound loss. So you can say it slows down, but once again, you're getting leaner there. We don't expect you to lose, it will slow in the numbers. And then coming out of March 25th, 254 to April 29th, 244. So 14 pounds, right? So we're sticking right around that, give or take a pound or two, every single month. End of April, 244 to end of May, 238. End of May, 238 to end of June, 226. So pretty steady at what we were losing. And I think that was just because you were steady with everything, diet wise at this point. We didn't make much changes other than what we talked about, let you just go higher on protein because the carbs and fats were already relatively low. And then July or end of June, 226 to the end of July, 213, which was kind of cool, right? I mean, it was just steady, same day in and day out. Then
anybody that, sorry to interrupt, anyone that is thinking about joining Jeremy's team, you can ask this man any question across the board. And as silly as it might sound, he's going to give you a level-headed answer. So keep that in mind. If you're looking for a coach, definitely jump on his team.
Man, and maybe it's like maybe I did this when I was younger, and I'm sure I did in my 20s, like trying to prove myself. And then as you get older, you realize like, I don't need to make this difficult. I don't need to use big words. I mean, hell, I can't pronounce big words, right? Like I can barely speak. I'm from Appalachia. People got to we got to put captions on the podcast so people can even understand me, right? So I've learned to like, okay, how can I take this complicated stuff and make it as simple as possible, right? And then, as you want to learn more, and we get into second layer, we have those conversations. To finish out the numbers, July into June 226, into July 213, into July 213 to the end of August 204, and then kind of after that, we didn't really lose a lot. I mean, you did get down November 194. Lowest that we saw on was not 193 in the app.
2.4,
but
or 0.2.
Yeah, your body composition is what we changed so much.
It totally changed
that last quarter. And I remember us having a conversation of like, going into that last quarter about talking about the possibility of winning the lifestyle. And like, hey, we got to bring a really good finished product. And it was cool just to see that weight not really move that much in that last quarter, but it was like week after week, a little bit leaner, right? You could see your lats a little bit more. You could see your abs. Like it was just cool to see that process. And then for the listeners, like we actually added some carbs and added calories in during the last quarter. And this is something I like to do for a couple of different reasons. You touched on this earlier. One is the mental aspect. because once Gavin was hitting, let's just say 300 grams of protein, 125 carbs, 80 fat. I don't remember the fat. Like I'm just throwing numbers
60.
out. Yeah,
I
50.
remember.
Okay. Yeah, he's like, I got this, Jeremy.
I couldn't eat a ribeye,
Right. So once he consistently did 300 grams of protein, 125 carbs, and 50 fat for so long, then I got to think about the psychological aspect of like, okay, now he knows those numbers work. I've got to earn his trust and show him that, hey, you can have more calories and still have success. So part of what I do is I start adding some carbohydrate in on someone's highest volume day, which for the most part in our workouts is going to be leg day, because your legs are the biggest muscle, right? They're going to use the most calories, they're going to use the most, carbohydrate during that weight training session. So we bumped his carbs up to 200 grams on leg day as a first introductory. And then once again, he still was trimming out and he noticed the energy difference. So I like to do that for those two reasons, from a psychological standpoint, to show the numbers, but also so that you notice the energy difference when you fuel those workouts.
Mm-hmm. And so I'll just talk about like the last 5-6 weeks leading up to the end of the challenge. So we increased my carbs. Can't remember what that number was, but we increased that on Mondays. Tuesdays, I always fast on my workouts. Personally, I found out that works. That I like how that feels. So I wake up, I do my resistance training, I post workout, eat breakfast, and then I usually fast again till about 2-ish. And I do my walk before that. And then from there, I'll eat a meal, because I find that eating that meal after that kind of opens the floodgates of like, oh, let's feed. So I'll eat at like 2, 3, and then I'll eat again at 5. And then I always finished up with a protein ice cream or protein yogurt. I know it's terrible, but it worked right before bed, to be completely honest. And I would put in about 75 grams of protein right before bed. So it fills me. And it could be, I don't know if there's any science behind it, but it gives my muscles something to do and my body something to do overnight when I'm sleeping. So when I do wake up and do that fasted right in the morning, I'm good to go. But
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. So I don't think that, the thing about like time, a lot of that time eating, as far as don't eat after a certain time, is more just a general rule of thumb, right? Because it's still, at the end of the day, total calories in versus total calories out. There's been some, data, and even the Whoop app with just questionnaires, looks at some people do sleep better if they have a little bit of carbohydrate at night. Some people don't. Mm-hmm. Some people do with the protein. So, I think it really becomes the individual at that point, but there's nothing wrong with having, if you're going to have protein to help with recovery, adding it at night is a tool that we can do. Right. Because then what's going to happen is the body, like you were saying, you are going to burn a little bit more calories because your body has to digest that protein throughout the night. So not only burning a little bit more calories, you're also providing those amino acids to help build muscle up all other tissues during the night. So that is a timing thing that, you can do to help with recovery, help get your protein in, is have some protein, there before bed. Now, the other little caveat, just if people are going to eat late, it is trial and error. If you're waking up and, your stomach's upset, you feel like you got a little bit of GERD or gas, then maybe you're not digesting that really well because you're eating and laying down, right? Because our bodies are not made to digest food when we're laying down. So there's just things to take in consideration from that aspect. But for you, it worked perfect, right?
Yeah.
Nice little, I hate to say treat, but nice little treat in the evening. You look forward to it. You were able to eat. So you, once again, and I think for you, I don't remember you ever telling me you were hungry.
Not until
the last couple weeks.
No, probably the last month and a half.
Yeah.
But I've during this whole process, like I would just eat to eat. During this process, I've learned that how my body reacts differently to different foods, and I've learned just I'm going to stick away from that. I'm going to have a little of this and some of that, and next thing you know, I have something that I can enjoy, and I'm back to eating not normal, said unsaid, but being in a caloric deficit for over a year, you essentially you forget what you could eat before, what you can't eat, and so you test it, and you're like, oh, that was one of those no's. So let's go back to the basics. And I found over the past week or two, because I've just been enjoying a little bit more and testing different foods, that I'm falling back on my fajita veggies and chicken and my salads and chicken. and broccoli and stuff. It's just easy. It doesn't upset my stomach, and it fills my cup.
Yeah.
So
And before we get to some of the final questions I want to ask, that's one thing I was going to mention is like we were still trying to do a little bit of energy cycling, giving you a little bit more calories on certain days, and you were struggling a little bit. You kind of messaged and said, "Hey, Jeremy, I'm struggling finding a routine." So what we did there, since we're just increasing calories total for you, we just got away from, okay, let's not worry about performance and providing more calories on training days. Let's just go with the set numbers across the board. And what that allowed you to do is, like you said, it allowed you then to develop a new style of what you can work in, right, into the plan versus, well, one day I can work this in, but I can't the next day, so, and that's just part of it. Like, guys, that's the beautiful thing about nutrition is there's not a one size fits all approach, and you got to play with it. But you are in one of those important eras that I think it's important to track, right? Because the next 6 months for you, figuring out what you can do for maintenance as we're trying to, build a little bit of muscle tissue is going to be key, because what you learn over the next few months is really what you're going to do for a lifetime, right? We don't need to be 300 grams of protein, 125 grams of carbs, and 50 grams of fat. We don't need to be that anymore. Maybe, before a cruise, family cruise, you want to, you want to tighten down. Yes, we know those numbers will work for that. But what we're doing right now is we're finding what's going to work for lifetime. Okay.
Yeah.
Couple questions. What would you tell someone that is, 300 pounds, struggling, maybe that same mindset that you had a year ago? What is something that if you had their ear right now, you could say directly to them?
I would just tell them, I know you say it all the time, but there's a couple different things, and it's stacked all in one group. But simple is sexy. It's not going to happen right off the bat. And 3, just stay consistent with it. If you start it, it's not going to be good every single day, but every day you can do better. So if day 2 is you had an extra bite of muffin, just know the next day, I didn't like how I felt that day. So let's go back to simple. You know what you can control. So just put your head down, just focus. Again, not every day is going to be perfect, but just keep going.
You only fail when you stop, right? Yep. And I'll tell people like, hey, they're like, I'm starting over from scratch. You're not starting over from scratch. You're starting over with knowledge and experience. That's something to keep.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was jabbering.
No, a work call was coming through and it's loud.
You have mail, man. We on, right?
AOL. Hey,
sorry.
I still remember that. Okay.
Yeah, I know. Right. Okay. Last question of the day. Okay. Yeah. You lost almost, 100 pounds, lost a lot of things, gained some stuff, right? Gained a little cash in your pocket, which a little bit of that cash he's carrying on the tradition of buying me a bottle of bourbon if you win. So, hey, if you are a winner out there, that's tradition. I did have someone buy me Eric bought me a nice pair of boots, Texas boots. So I was like, okay, I was okay with that little change. But it's generally been bourbon. And you're looking for that Elijah Craig 18, which I can't wait to celebrate with that. But what is something else you gained that you didn't think about, right? Like, what is something that, you're just like, man, I never thought this would be better, or this would be the way I thought, in changing my life?
So one thing that has stuck that I've read, just being mindful about everything, is you have to be selfish in order to be selfless. And that alone has never clicked in what does that mean. So through this journey, I have gained the knowledge of not only learning what that means, but being able to share that. So being able to share my time with my kids, being able to share the time with my wife, and just being present, which I'm still working on. It doesn't come easily, but when you're overweight, you don't want to go out. You want to stay in the same cocoon you're in. You don't want to do anything. Your phone's usually at your fingertips 24/7. You're on your phone because you don't want to associate with anybody else. Or if you do, it's just simple conversations. So over this past year, you have to be selfish in order to be selfless. and bringing that into 2025. One of my goals this year is to have real conversations and to love positively. And so those are two larger goals that I have, but it's more of a mental aspect. So I gained a little bit of mental clarity in just being able to live and find the meaning of life, essentially, which sounds weird, but
Oh,
it's gained rejuvenation,
no.
essentially.
Yes, 100%. And
Oh,
it's everybody has a day one. That's what I'm going to end this
yeah,
one with. Everybody has a day one. Okay. So if you're listening to this, share the podcast, this one specifically, with someone that's maybe struggling or, that needs to hear that they can succeed. Right. And remember, it all starts with belief. It all starts with knowing that you can change. And then, Gavin's here to help. I'm here to help. Reach out to either one of us, on social media. Ask your questions. No questions dumb. A lot of people, it is crazy, right? Reach out to him if you have a specific question like how he was feeling. I think that's important, and he'll be brutal and honest with you. Like, here's what I was feeling at this time. Here are the struggles you're going to have, because it's not,
yeah,
rainbows and unicorns all the time. It's going to be hard. And sometimes you have to choose hard. Okay. But
yeah,
everybody has a day one. Let's make day one tomorrow for a lot of you guys. And let's start rocking and rolling. So, Gavin, I appreciate your time, man. I appreciate, I'm looking forward to getting to see you here in a couple of weeks when we go out to
yeah,
HQ and tell your story on that side of things, and have some dinner together, sweat together.
yeah.
Make it a good start to February. So
Definitely, I'm excited about it, and thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
awesome. Appreciate you.